indeed for the warm welcome. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. What can I call the audience? Just ladies and gentlemen? Or the heroes and the heroines of the day? I call them super because actually they are modeling the lives of the future of India. Thank you for being with me. It's an honor and a pleasure to sit in your company. Where does one begin when one thinks about the Indian education scenario? The space is the largest, and we are so fortunate to be right here in this millennium to be able to look at that space. But this is one country where there is such a huge demand for education, but where is the supply is the question. The second thought that comes to my mind all along is, which India do we belong to? For I think India today lives in several centuries. Do you belong to the 18th century? Do you belong to the 19th century? Do you belong to the 20th century? Or do you belong to the 21st century? Is a question that you need to ask yourselves. Conference after conference, meeting after meeting, there is no end to the talk that goes on in conference halls of this nation. But there is someone, somewhere, who's crying for one rubber and one pencil and one teacher and one school and one blackboard. And here we talk about big things like the future of India connected with the best education, best assessment, best books, and the best of everything which you and I can afford. Not only the poor, stricken children who have no schools, but my heart also cries out for those who may not be able to read at all, who may not be able to speak, who may not be able to talk, who may not be able to walk. What is this country doing for them is another question. And then we start thinking about the entire education scenario in a much bigger manner, away from Mrs. Chona's perspective, experiences, thoughts, worries, anxieties, etc. Do you know, ladies and gentlemen, that we need 50,000 crores in this nation for the education for all, for education which is quality education. And in this, if my estimates have been given rightly, 10% of the central government and 90% by the state governments have to spend. We have only 4% or little more in the GDP, and we require 9% of the additional GDP. And where do we get this money from? We have the education cess, no doubt, but can we mobilize that for our children? I think again and again the same questions arise. We have had these great slogans on the television, chalo, chalo, school bharo. But when the schools are getting filled up, and then we are talking about the class size and quality, what do those children do for whom there are no schools, but they have dreams? We need certainly relevant, world-class education, both in the primary, secondary levels as well as the senior secondary. We also need vocational, higher and technical education. And we need the government of India to be a facilitator, as much as a teacher should be a facilitator in the classroom and not a controller. Like in business and industry, do we need the license Raj in education is the key question in my mind. All subsidies, I think, from higher education should be diverted to primary and secondary education, because a little baby is the future of tomorrow. What you can teach him when he's little is something that he will never forget. That's why for this conference, school is such an important session. What a child learns in school, he can never forget all his life. And remember, the first school of the child is the home. Are we doing anything for any parental counseling? I think it's a subject to be introduced everywhere. The students tell their parents their problems, but the parents are too afraid to even express themselves in the parent bodies So how do we expect that the schools in this country will ever see a change? I think it's high time, and we are in the right place to discuss the position of education to be recognized as an enterprise. According to our Constitution, you cannot open a school unless it is registered as a non-profit society or a trust. But then the largest amount of money is flowing into private education from all over the world. There must be a reason for that. There must be a reason for that, and how is that reason being taken care of is anybody's guess. We need to allow tax break in investment in education to make it really, really good at 2020. I'm sure you will all join me in accepting the fact that for any nation to grow, to build, to become number one, or to be among the successful nations of the world, we need education and health. And when you talk about average not good enough, this is something which is applied to health as well. I think we are largely below average. So how do we first become average, and then high average, and then we go into pursuit of excellence? Is only going to happen when you and I get together, hold hands, and have conferences like this, where we not only speak, but we also have action points, so that when we meet again, these discussions are converted into actually facts. These days, when you pick up Times of India or Hindustan Times, and when they tell us that what you read actually transformed the lives of the children, it makes sense to us. Therefore, let's move from theory to practice. Let us start looking at life as the life for the children and not life for the adults. I have always maintained that when adults, they become adulterated. And when they become adulterated, there is no way we can really help the children to have those honest values that we are talking about. It's all very well to think about technology, all very well to think about small classrooms. It's wonderful to want better teachers, but can you have better teachers with a bad B.Ed curriculum? These are some basic facts I thought I will share with you, which happened to take away my night's sleep. And I dream of that child who will head not only this nation, but the world, provided he has great opportunity and equal access to the institutions where your and my children are studying, or will study, or have studied.